Welcome on into the Wolverine.com podcast. Clayton Safey here with Anthony Broom. Chris Ballas not able to make it today. He will be with us in Norman, Oklahoma, and we will have his final score prediction for Michigan, Oklahoma later on in the show. So don't worry about that. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like this video. If you want Michigan to take down the Sooners on Saturday night, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and head to thewolverine.com. As always, you can use the promo code UM1 for 2 months of premium access for just $1. That is the promo code UM and the numeral 1. 2 months of access for just $1. Leave a comment if you're on the YouTube here with your final score prediction. Would love to see some of those. Will the Wolverines pull it out? Will Oklahoma get their number on Saturday night? Leave us a comment there. And speaking of Oklahoma, that is where our Anthony Broom is currently reporting from. He's live in Norman. Chris and I will be down there tomorrow. But Anthony, you made the early trip. What are the vibes like down there?
Very hospitable. I've run into a few Oklahoma fans, and they've been kind. And obviously, we've had a few interactions with them between message boards, with our board and Sooner Scoop as well. So good people. And I think for both fan bases, they come into this week both cautiously optimistic and also incredibly anxious, because this could go either way. This is a coin flip game for both of these teams. But so far, it's hot down here today. I think it's going up to like 88, but we're getting like week 2 Ann Arbor weather for this game on Saturday. The high is only going to be 75. It'll get a little cooler at night. Obviously, it's a night game. So maybe that's a good sign, bringing some northern weather down into what is now SEC country.
It doesn't hurt. It's funny. One of the worries with this game is that it's at night and the atmosphere is going to be, incredibly raucous, and it's going to be awesome. Frankly, it's going to be electric. But that also makes it tougher to win, but it'll be cooler at night. And as you said, and that was more looking at it months ago. Now the weather all day on Saturday is going to be pretty cool. Like you said. So I've been kind of tracking that throughout the week. I'm excited for that. I think that helps Michigan a little bit, but it's not going to come down to something like that. Let's talk about Oklahoma. Brent Venables as their head coach, who was the defensive coordinator when Sharon Moore, Michigan's head coach, was an offensive lineman there in 2006 and 2007. Sharon went to Butler Community College, goes to Oklahoma for 2 years. And a lot of familiarity with the two staffs. Sharon Moore going back to his alma mater. I'll talk about that in just a second. I have a quiz question for you, Anthony. But huge game for Oklahoma. You go over to Soonerscoop.com, our Oklahoma site over on the On3 network, and reading a column this morning from George Stoya, who I talked to for one of our features this week. And, he was writing about how this is the biggest game in Brent Venables' career. Of course, he's in year 4 now. And it's kind of funny. It reminded me a little bit of early on in Jim Harbaugh's tenure, that every big game they would play, particularly a lot of these, top 25 type of games, people would say, this is the biggest game of Jim Harbaugh's career. This is the biggest game of his tenure at Michigan. But then you start winning a lot of them, consecutively, and you start winning a ton of games, then they're not anymore, right? They're only the biggest if you lose, and then that's what, the people who they're going to run with that narrative. But I did find it interesting because he hasn't had that signature win. This would certainly be a signature victory. They have struggled quite a bit under Brent Venables ever since Lincoln Riley left for USC. 2 of the seasons, they're under 500. They hadn't gone under 500 before Brent Venables got there since 1998, when John Blake was the head coach and fired after that season. Last year, they go 6-7. But some things on their side as well. They're 16-4 at home under Brent Venables, and have struggled a little bit against top 25 teams. They're 4-5 under Venables. They're 2-4 against top 15 teams. Michigan comes in at number 15 this week in the AP poll, number 13 in the coaches poll. He's 5-9 in one-score games. So, yeah, it's a big game for Venables, but Michigan had quite a rough season last year too, so it's also a big game for Sharon Moore.
It's a huge game, and I'd have to think, like, what's Sharon's schedule in one-score games? Is it there was Minnesota, USC,
Ohio State 2023.
Ohio State 2023, Ohio State 2024. I feel like Indiana was a 1-score game last year. They lost. So yeah, some good pedigree on Michigan's end. Again, this is one of those games where, and I've done a couple radio hits down here in Oklahoma since I got down here too. It's a coin flip game in terms of both sides of this matchup have so many questions and so many uncertainties and a lot that their head coaches need to prove. I've said all week for Michigan, this feels more like a litmus test than a must win. Whereas if Brent Venables and Oklahoma lose this game, they're going to kind of freak out down here. So it's interested in that regard. You feel pretty good about Michigan's chances if they're able to get themselves into one of those 4-quarter, 1-score games. I mean, I've wrote about this a few times. Michigan fans don't want it to come down to this, but what if in the fourth quarter, Bryce Underwood and the Michigan offense have the ball in their hands with a chance to tie or take the lead late? That's a scenario that no one wants. You'd rather have the game in hand, but we're going to learn a lot about this team.
Well, I would take that scenario over a lot of other scenarios.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just saying, Michigan fans in real time, you can say things on paper. Oh, I'll take that. I'll take that. But in real time, if they're there, it's going to stress a lot of people out, and we're going to learn a lot. And I think this game is, I don't want to call it house money. There are huge benefits to going down there and winning this game, but it's going to be just a good test to see how ready is Bryce Underwood for this atmosphere. The last time he played a true road game as a quarterback, he played at Howell High School last fall, and they lost 30-29. So
it's a hell of an environment.
That's what I've heard. But can you imagine the storyline turning the page from something like that to the next road game you play is a top 25 win in Norman, Oklahoma? So there are a lot of fun and interesting storylines going into this. And I'll talk about it later when we go through staff picks, but this is probably the hardest beat I've ever had on a game that I can ever remember. It's really hard to nail down who has an advantage where and what this might look like, because there are so many unknowns and so many storylines with both teams.
Well, I think for both teams, the outlook of your season changes drastically based on the result of this game. If you win in your Michigan, I mean, the possibilities are exciting and pretty much endless for what this season could be. I mean, that would show that you could go into an environment at night with a freshman quarterback who, if you win, it means he likely played really well, or at least didn't make big mistakes and remain very poised. And that would bode well for the rest of the schedule. If you lose, then your head coach is suspended the next 2 games. You have to go at Nebraska 2 weeks later. You could be 2-2. And you are kind of freaking out as well. So I don't think it's anywhere near house money. I think this is just a huge game for what Michigan's season could be. Oklahoma, they're thinking the same thing, but we don't cover them. So I don't care as much about how their freak out would be. But it certainly would be there. And that's why there's a lot of pressure for both teams in this game, which will be
think about this too. I mean, something that I've talked about a lot is if you can get one of these 3 road games that are in that first half of the schedule, I'm going to feel pretty good about what this team looks like in the back half of the schedule and what they have a chance to do. But if getting one of those 3 is this Saturday and you have that bird in hand right off the bat, that dramatically changes what the outlook and expectations might be.
No doubt. I couldn't agree more with that. Just the second ever meeting between these two teams. I know that's, people have kind of talked about that for a while, really all offseason, looking at this game from afar. But the first one, Michigan also had a true freshman quarterback, Rick Leach, the left-hander, on January 1, 1976 in the Orange Bowl, 14-6 Oklahoma win. That secured their second straight national championship. Rick Leach got hurt, I think concussion and a leg injury in that game. But this is just one of those cool matchups that you really haven't seen in either of our lifetimes. We haven't seen it. A lot of other people's lifetimes, it's just been once. And, it was in a postseason game. This is a regular season game on a college campus in Norman. We'll get it back here in Ann Arbor next year. So it's very, very exciting. The Gaylord Family Memorial Stadium will play host to these two teams. Capacity of 80,126. And the grass, Bermuda grass, that will be the surface. It's funny, I was driving by yesterday over the Stadium Boulevard Bridge, driving home, and I always look out, do a little in-person scouting when I can. You look out the window. It's a little dangerous. You got to make sure you don't rear end somebody. But I'm like, okay, you see some movement on the practice fields, and all right, cool. Let's take a look. How are the boys looking? Usually you can like pick out one player, and then next thing you know, you drove past and can't see anything anymore. And I was like, oh, where are all of them? And they weren't on the two turf fields. Everybody at that moment in time was on the real grass field that kind of runs perpendicular to the two artificial fields. And so they're getting ready. They're going to have their the spikes ready, all that equipment. Sonny Anderson, the equipment coordinator, going to get those boys right, I'm sure. Michigan's won some games on grass recently. They got some good grass players. You got Jordan Marshall, went for 100 against Alabama in the ReliaQuest Bowl at Raymond James Stadium. And that was quite the playing surface. Guys had to change out spikes and things mid-game because of the rain in that one, but they will be on grass for the first time this season. I mentioned it. Sharon Moore, this is his alma mater he's going up against. He will become, on Saturday night, the fifth Michigan coach to face a Michigan head coach to face his alma mater. Can you name the other four that have done it? Chris would have had a better shot. No offense. I was expecting Chris.
No, it's totally fine.
I don't know.
I'm usually pretty good at these. I have no clue at all. I have no beat on this at all. The only one Jim Harbaugh, because Michigan versus Michigan in the spring game. That's
spring game that doesn't count. But yeah, I did think of throwing that one in there. That would have been a lot of Michigan coaches. I don't know how long spring games have been around, but I think 5, 6, 7 of them played at Michigan, so they would have had that. But no, these are 5 against other teams. I guess I could have specified. The last one being Gary Moeller, who went up against Ohio State 5 times. He went 3-1-1. Bump Elliott, insanely enough, went 1-5 against Purdue, where he was a halfback. Fritz Chrysler was 2-0 against the University of Chicago, where he played from 1919 to 1921. And then the most fun one, Anthony, is Fielding H. Yost. He beat his own West Virginia Mountaineers 130-0 on October 22nd, 1904. Michigan scored 43 points for every yard that West Virginia recorded in that game. That point total stands as the most Michigan has scored in a game. It's the biggest margin of victory, of course, that Michigan has had in a football game. So I thought those were some fun nuggets.
You're going to have to send me that, because I'm going to do a fun facts thing, I think either Friday or Saturday morning. And that's what a wild stat, 130-0. That's just so disrespectful. Michigan needs an interim coach for next week when they play CMU. If it was me, I wouldn't even be able to do that to my alma mater. So,
and your alma mater is looking okay, man. Your alma mater is looking okay. Central Michigan. All those stats are in today's By the Numbers piece over on the Wolverine.com, though, so people can check that out. Let's get into it. The Michigan offense against the Oklahoma defense is where we will start. As we said, Bryce Underwood making his first road start, his second overall game as a college football player, and he's going up against Brent Venables, who's one of the best defensive minds in the country. He's calling their plays this year on defense. He did so a couple of years ago. Last year they had a coordinator. He left, actually, I believe, for West Virginia. Speaking of the Mountaineers, sorry to bring up your 130-0 loss if any West Virginia fans are watching. But this is a really good defense, Anthony. As you know, the defensive line's deep. It kind of reminds you of Michigan in that way. The guy who you really key in on, number 32, R. Mason Thomas, had 9 sacks last season. DBs look good, but they're a little bit young at corner. They'll start a true freshman, Courtney Guillory, there. He had a pass interference penalty last weekend, much like Michigan had a couple of those last week against New Mexico. But should mention Oklahoma coming off a 35-3 win over Illinois State, which is an FCS team. Hard to glean a ton from it, but actually gleaned a little bit more watching that game than I thought I would. So you're looking at an Oklahoma defensive line that really gave Illinois State no time to throw. Illinois State finished with 34 passing yards. That's the fewest Oklahoma's given up in a game since allowing only 16 to Kansas in 2013. That's pretty insane as well. They didn't attempt to pass 10 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. They couldn't get anything going down the field. So it sounds kind of familiar, right? You're not going to be able to get much going down the field if you're one of these lesser opponents against a Michigan D-line like New Mexico faced last week, or an Oklahoma defensive front like Illinois State played. But Illinois State had some success on the ground, 117 yards, averaged 4.5 yards per carry, had a couple bigger ones, quarterback keeper. They caught him off guard on a 3rd and 13. They had a few just right up the middle where there was good blocking and a good hole. So great pass, rush from Oklahoma. Run defense was a little suspect, but it's an opener. Maybe they're overlooking them, whatever. I expect it to be a strong front on Saturday.
Yeah, two kind of similar defensive performances when you look at how Oklahoma played last week, how Michigan played last week. I think we both can sit here pretty comfortably saying that they each has more to give. And for Michigan, like I said, the reason that they were maybe a little lax last week is a lot of rotation, a lot of, who knows, maybe looking ahead to this week, not putting anything on film. When it comes to the Michigan offense, and I hate that the conversation does just come back to Bryce Underwood because he gets talked about so much, maybe at the expense of some other guys who had really nice openers. But to me, this game is as simple as Brett Venables is going to throw the kitchen sink at this kid. He's going to try to make him see things that he doesn't see. He's going to make him not see things that are actually there. But what I was so impressed last week with was how quick and decisive the ball came out of his hands. In the quick game, you look how they got Samaj Morgan involved. 2.24 seconds time to throw is what he took after he would receive a snap last week, that's like top 15, top 20 stuff over the course of any football season. It certainly was a mark that was in that range for week 1. So, Michigan's going to want to get its run game going. But at the same time, I think something that we kind of got breadcrumbs of this week is that they are willing to pass to set up the run if they need to. So we'll see what happens. Now, I think when you look at the secondary, certainly I think there's a couple matchups that Michigan can exploit there. You talked about the freshman cornerback. That's where I'm putting Donovan McCulley across from that guy. And I'm taking some of those deep shots this week. We talk about how the reason they added him to the roster was because he, gave them that Nico Collins type of presence as a jump ball guy down the field. This is the type of game where you want to try and get that going and exploit that a little bit. I also think it's a week where we could see Underwood use his legs. We talk about how decisive he was throwing the football. I think some of those reads probably get pared down a bit this week to where maybe it's first progression, second progression. And if you don't see anything, you go make something happen. I don't know. We don't know what level there is a designed run game for him because we haven't seen them use it yet. They didn't run him at all last week. But, if he's able to come out and just be as quick, for as good as Oklahoma's defensive line is, we saw Michigan's defensive line last week. When New Mexico got the quick game going, you negate that pass rush. And, it might be death by a million paper cuts to a certain extent, but that's how Michigan wants to play. Even with this new offense where Chip Lindsey wants to make you defend everything on the field, if they can kind of dink and dunk their way down the field and then, hey, you know what? We have the best kicker in the country. Just going to let Dominic Zavada go out there and get us points. That's going to be that's a huge weapon for them. So I came away from a second and third viewing feeling a lot better about Michigan's offense. Oklahoma's defense, again, I think they're extremely stout up front. I think the linebackers are solid. I think in the secondary, there are some matchups to be had there if your freshman quarterback is able to see that and diagnose that quickly. And, oftentimes we talk about the biggest jump is from week 1 to week 2. I would love to see it. With how good as that baseline was, I would love to see how much more he has to give heading into an atmosphere like this, because it's there on paper. There's no reason I won't say there's no reason, but the odds are very heavily stacked against him being successful in this environment. But he is that good and that different too.
Yeah, he was made for the moment last week. This is just a different moment in a different type of environment. And I could see it going really well. I could also see it being a bit of a struggle. But at the same time, my biggest concerns with this Michigan offense, number one, is not Bryce Underwood. I could be proven totally wrong there, but for I guess with how it plays out. But for me, it's not just that Brent Venables is going to try to confuse Bryce Underwood. He's going to try to throw a bunch of different looks at Michigan's offensive line. They're going to have to communicate. It's going to be really loud. They're going to be on a silent count. Michigan had a couple pre-snap penalties last week. Those would be even more detrimental this week. Certainly not even detrimental at all last week. This time, if you back yourself up behind the sticks, that's going to be an issue. So kind of a lot to watch there. Can the receivers make some plays? Now, Bryce Underwood helps them make a lot of plays. When you look at last week, 154 yards after the catch, and a lot of that had to do with Bryce Underwood, where he placed the football, the timing, the zip on the ball, how he can get it there really quickly when there is a window where a receiver is open. 154 yards after the catch. Last year, they had only 906 yards after the catch in 13 games. That ranked dead last in the Big Ten. For week one, small sample size, Michigan fourth in the Big Ten in yards after the catch. A lot of Big Ten teams played cupcakes, so it's not like it's just opponent determinant. It is something I think definitely to watch, that he is allowing these guys to make some plays. They're going to need to hit some big ones, I think, in this game, and it's about not making the big mistake as well. And then the consistency, like you talked about. Can you run the ball? Can you get those shorter passes going where you do get just solid gains, right? 6 yards is a good gain. Things like that. So it's going to be exciting, man. You see Bryce Underwood in the road uniform for the first time, what he's going to look like against a defense like this. And if he passes this test, Anthony, the hype is going to go through the roof. The hype already is, but it'll go to another level. And if they don't, and if he doesn't look as good in that moment, none of my long-term expectations for Bryce change. But in the short term, this thing could get really, really fun if he can come out here and play really well.
It would be incredibly fun to watch. I mean, it already is incredibly fun to watch. Even, the range of outcomes is so wide. Like, he could still play well and make a big mistake, and that's what cost them the game. I think when you start a freshman, those are inherently some of the risks you take. But that's football. You have to go out there and play and do what you can to give yourself the best chance of winning. It's not – the thing is, like, it doesn't have to be him at all. Like, his infrastructure could help him out greatly, like you said, with the offensive line. We haven't even talked about Justice Haynes, Jordan Marshall yet. I think Jordan Marshall could be in for a big week, especially if this does turn into one of those street fight type of games. So
he's good on grass.
He's good on grass, as you said. That's the stat of the.
I love tracking that. I love tracking that. Andrew Anthony was a grass guy back in the day. Yeah. So
yeah, former Oklahoma Sooner too. He'll be a player of the game this week when they play Illinois. By the way, yeah, I don't. Probably not Michigan.
He's got Illinois this week over at Duke. So
yeah, that'll be a fun game too. But this is where I feel like whatever you get out of him being Bryce Underwood, it is. The house money aspect of it is that the hype for him can only grow this week. The excitement doesn't die down if he doesn't play well, because guess what? 2 weeks, you get a chance to go right back on the road and see how much better you've got. So, and maybe that in real time, if something happens, people will freak out and be angry and scream. But at the end of the day, that's what's on the table for him this week. So it's an incredibly exciting spot for him to be in, for Michigan to be in. And, if they can, I expect the defense to play better. So if the offense can pull its weight and put them in position to win, you'll take that scenario. So it's going to be fun.
And you mentioned it, that you have Dominic Zavada. So if this game is close at the end, I think you feel pretty good. Let's say it does come down to Michigan. It's a tie game late, and you have that kicker, and you have the football. If you were an odds maker in Vegas, with this quarterback and that kicker, I would imagine it's the final drive, again, tie game for someone to win in regulation. Michigan's the favorite at that point, because in part, you pretty much need to get to the 35-yard line, and you have a heck of a chance of getting at least 3 points. But we shall see. And I agree with you.
It's also worth mentioning, it seems like things are strongly trending towards Hogan Hansen playing, so that you could maybe add another pass catcher into the mix after they already showed, or Michigan's passing offense already showed last week that the quarterback is willing and able to distribute evenly among the guys out there.
Able is huge. Able is massive.
Yeah.
Being able to is what a difference that was.
There are so many simple, executed, crisp things that happened last week that look more impressive than they were because we basically watched. I can't even say it was a service academy offense. The service academies all had passing plays of 40 or more yards last year. They had one that was 39 yards. They missed getting that monkey off the bat by 1 yard, but who knows? Maybe it happens this week.
But still would have been the longest last year, really the longest since I think the Minnesota game in 2023, which was what, game 5, game 6, something like that. So they did break out, quite a bit, I think, and that was nice to see. Now they have some momentum, a little bit more confidence. Got to get rid of some of the drops, but that pass game has a lot more juice than it did a year ago. That is certainly not a hot take. Let's move over to the Michigan defense against this Oklahoma offense, which is where this matchup gets really fun. I guess the first part was fun, but before we do, we have to talk about game time. Football season is back. The NFL is back tonight here on Thursday night. Tailgating season is back, and you can take the stress out of buying tickets with Game Time. Game Time is the official ticketing partner of the Wolverine podcast. It's the best place to buy tickets, and the Game Time guarantee means you can trust you'll get 100% authentic tickets on time and at the best price. I've used it. My family used it last week to get to the Michigan-New Mexico game. Everybody I know, they hit me up for tickets. I say, just go to Game Time and use the promo code ON3. My favorite feature is the view from all the seats in the venue. You click on one. Hey, let's see what it's like from section 20 or 21, something like that. There we go. We got the views from any seats that are available. You can see what you're in for. Game Time has the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and more. They have the lowest price guarantee, or they'll credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code ON3, that is ON3, ON in the numeral 3 for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. This is a really fun matchup with the Michigan defense going out there on the road in the silence, right? They're going to try to they're going to have it a little bit quieter than the offense is going to when Oklahoma's offense is out there. Michigan will be without senior linebacker Jayshon Barham in the first half due to the targeting call last week that, if you haven't seen, I don't know why you're listening to our podcast if you haven't seen it yet. You're likely a diehard fan. But expecting Jimmy Rolder to play, expecting Cole Sullivan potentially to get some snaps as well. And when Jayshon Barham gets back in the second half, TJ Guy says he's going to FS up. You can, you can fill in some of those blanks there. So they will get him back in the second half. But really the story with this matchup, Anthony, is John Mateer, Oklahoma's quarterback, transfer from Washington State, who was really good last week. He completed 30 of his 37 passes for 392 yards and 3 touchdowns. Threw the 1 interception. I thought he put the ball in harm's way a couple other times. Could have resulted in interceptions. They win 35-3 over Illinois State. He's a team captain this year. He was a team captain at Washington State. As Lou Esposito, Michigan's D-line coach, said earlier this week, he's the type of guy that was probably the shortstop at high school, the point guard in high school, the quarterback in high school. He's probably the homecoming king. Like, he's just that type of guy. And listening to people talk about him, Todd McShay has had several good breakdowns on John Mateer, one in the offseason, a couple this week, coming off of the opener and heading into the Michigan game. And he said it like he's just a classic Texas high school quarterback. Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield, guys like that who can run around, make plays. They kind of play free, play loose. Had a huge season at Washington State last year, completed 64.6% of his passes for 3,139 yards, 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions in 12 games. He will air it out. A lot of deep passes. He also is quite the runner. Lou Esposito said that he's kind of like a running back when he runs. He had 826 yards on the ground last year, 15 touchdowns for Washington State. As a runner, he only had 7 carries last week. Did have a quarterback sweep touchdown at the goal line. They're going to use his legs down there. No question in my mind. Lou Esposito said him as a runner reminds him a little bit of Milroe, maybe not as fast, Jalen Milroe from Alabama last year. And that, what did they do with Jalen Milroe over the 2 years that Michigan faced them? In every big spot, right, they used his legs as a runner. And Michigan knew they were going to. I remember talking to guys about that after the Rose Bowl. They said every big down they had all season, they used his legs. And that's why Michigan was so ready for that final fourth down stop. But so I think they're going to do that. He's very familiar in this system. He played under Ben Arbuckle, the new Oklahoma offensive coordinator, for multiple seasons at Washington State. 29-year-old Ben Arbuckle, who is one of these hot offensive names in college football. He helped Cam Ward have a big year at Washington State before he went to Miami, became the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. So it starts with Mateer. There's a lot more to get to, but Anthony, what do you think about this quarterback that Michigan's going to face?
He's really, really good, man. I watched that first game that Oklahoma played last week. Went back and watched some highlights of things he did at Washington State last year. He is the Oklahoma type of quarterback that they haven't had since Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma. He's very much the point guard who can operate the offense, make all the throws. He takes shots down the field. And I'm not big into he's this player mixed with this player, but I would just say mix Baker Mayfield's command of that type of offense that he ran with the mobility that they had when Kyler Murray was their quarterback. I think that's the type of guy that Michigan's going up against. And again, I haven't watched all the quarterbacks that are draft eligible this year, but certainly think he's going to be a guy that when this is all said and done, he's going to be up there. So that's the type of guy that Michigan's up against on Saturday. Last year at Washington State, via Pro Football Focus, 18 big-time throws, 16 turnover-worthy plays. Last week in the opener, he had 3 big-time throws, 2 turnover-worthy plays. So talking about how he sometimes will put the ball in harm's way. We read the stat Monday where I think he had completed, 47.4% of his passes in the 2 games they played last year against Power 4 competition. And that was Texas Tech and Washington, 2 teams who were not very good, certainly defensively. And that same token, one of those games, he had 21 rushes for 197 yards. So if things aren't working for him in the passing game, he's going to get out the back door, make a play with make some plays with his legs, and keep things going, keep things alive. So, when you look at how you defend him, I think to a certain extent it's pick your poison. Certainly, I think I would want to keep him in the pocket and let him drop back the 40 or 50 times that he might do that, because if he's contained, he's not making those plays with his legs. And I think guys like this need that improvisational skill to make things happen. So if you can get it to where maybe it's like that Washington game of the national title where, they kept Michael Penix in the pocket, took away the run game, and, let him throw, let him make a mistake somewhere. That might be the best way to do it. Let them drive the field, let things shrink, and make their field goal kicker go out there. But, aside from just Mateer, they've got some. We've seen Deion Burks before. He played at Purdue. An interesting guy is the tight end, Jaron Kanek, who was a linebacker last year. But he's like a freakish athlete and is a bit explosive there. We saw him have a good opener. So they have some weapons here. And I know it's easy to just go back and look at those 2 Power 4 games from last season, but the infrastructure is, I think, better for him at Oklahoma. And obviously he's got familiarity with the play caller. So it's going to be incredibly, incredibly tough. It might be one of those bend but don't break weeks, honestly.
Really interesting, this offense. And you mentioned it, right? The familiarity that we both talked about. Ben Arbuckle, their coordinator, plans out John Mateer's day to the minute. I don't know if you heard the broadcast talk about that last week. And he did the same thing with Cam Ward 2 years ago before Ward went to Miami when he was at Washington State. They're very close. He ends up following him to Oklahoma. Arbuckle was hired before Mateer ended up going to Norman himself. He looked really comfortable last week back there. And so did Bryce Underwood in Michigan's opener as well. But when Bryce Underwood's going to go against Brent Venables, and John Mateer is going to go against Wink Martindale, you're not going to look as comfortable. So then what, right? Does he make the mistake? I mean, he was a little erratic on some of those short throws to the sideline. Mateer missed a couple of them. He only had 7 incompletions, but he really could have had 100% completion rate in that game, because I didn't think there were really many that he shouldn't have had, but he did miss a few throws. So if he makes a mistake himself, like we talked about, he's prone to doing in some of those. You mentioned the stats on our Monday show. How many interceptions did he throw in those 2 games against Power 4 teams last year? Was it 2 or 3, 4 maybe?
I think it was 2 touchdowns, 3 picks, or 2 touchdowns, 4 picks. It wasn't
so
he wasn't super reckless with the ball. He just was not making the throws. So
if you do get a big play like that, if your defensive backs get their hands on the football, they got to come up with a play. In a game like this, in a road environment, help kind of build that belief on the Michigan sideline, take some belief away from the Oklahoma sideline and their fans, who are a little nervous about how this season is going to go. They've invested a lot into this season after after one disappointing year, 2 out of 3 disappointing seasons going under 500. They had a 10-win season mixed in between those 2. But I think that getting a turnover or 2 would be huge for Michigan. Obviously, the running back position as well is really interesting to me. So Jaden Ott, the California transfer who had a shoulder sprain during fall camp, was a little bit limited, was listed as the 3rd string running back on their depth chart coming out of camp. He plays 4 offensive snaps. He was also in at kick return, had 1 rush for -3 yards, had 1 target in the pass game, which was a clear just miss by Mateer, threw it well behind him on like a swing pass. And now he's, apparently 100%, and he's going to play a huge role against Michigan. I think they were just being cautious with him last week and trying to hold him back. But they didn't look great at running back. Their starter, I forget his name, number 2, was ineffective largely this entire game. Torrey Blaylock, the true freshman, comes in. I thought he looked really good, but he got hurt. He had 8 carries for 44 yards and a touchdown. He injured his own shoulder, was in a sling after the game, after that performance. And they had a tough time running, even on an FCS team in Illinois State. 32 rushes, 103 yards. That's 3.2 yards per carry. The offensive line, they played 8 different players there. They shuffled some guys around, where the starting right guard played more at left guard than he did at the right side. They are talking about a couple guys getting a little bit more healthy there that they were being cautious with on the offensive line and could play against Michigan. So you don't really know what that line is going to be like, but it's also going to be a line that doesn't have a lot of cohesion, I would imagine. So Michigan's defensive front is going to be a tough challenge for them. And maybe they'll be able to get after Mateer a little bit. And you mentioned it, the wide receiving core, kind of a revamped group for Oklahoma. Deion Burks was hurt last year, but back healthy, 7 catches, 88 yards, 1 touchdown. Keontez Lewis was one of the players of the game, 9 grabs, 119 yards, 2 scores at wide receiver. And the tight end is just an intriguing player, but they didn't block well from that position. If you listen to, some of the Oklahoma people about what happened last week. So it's just an intriguing matchup. This is just a fun matchup, and it's going to be really exciting to watch. You mentioned the kicker. He is very good. He's a UTSA transfer. He went 19-23 last year, 35-36 on extra points. 54 yards is his career high. Last season, he was perfect from inside 40. He was 7 of 8 from 40 to 49 yards, 2 of 5 from 50 plus, including that 54-yarder. So he's good too. I mean, I would obviously take Zavada, but either team could get 3 points on the board from fairly deep as well. But any other thoughts on this Oklahoma offense?
It's going to be interesting to see how their run game performs, because, Jaden Ott was arguably, I'd have to look at the portal rankings, but I think it was maybe him, Mekhi Hughes, who wound up at Oregon, and then Justice Haynes in terms of the highest ranked portal backs. So
according to On3, he was Ott was number 4.
Okay, so right in that conversation.
Yes.
That could be a transformative thing for them, and another sort of pick your poison thing. But, in talking to some of the Oklahoma people down here, that, those few radio hits, they're pretty nervous about their offensive line. And when it comes down to what's the single area that Michigan could control to win this game, I think it would be their defensive line. Now, I wasn't crazy about how they played last week. But again, that's a counting numbers thing. You go back and watch the film. I think they were a lot better than maybe some of the yardage totals would indicate. But Derek Moore, time to have a big week. Be great for him to have a game on Saturday like he did in that ReliaQuest Bowl. Rayshon Benny, Trey Pierce are going to be huge. The pass rushers, maybe TJ Guy had the pick last week. Maybe he's a guy that can have a big impact on all this. But
he is a guy.
He's a dude.
He's a dude.
If we use the Don Brown
metric
on him. But I think there's a couple X factors on defense and guys that I will be looking at. Obviously, with Jayshawn Barham out, maybe I should just hold this to when we do our players of the game. But there's a couple guys who I think are going to have a say in how this goes for them.
Well, let's get to that then and make our predictions for Michigan and Oklahoma. We'll get our final score picks. We have offensive, defensive player of the game, X Factor. And it is all brought to you by BetMGM. The Wolverine has teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we have special offers for our listeners each week. When you join BetMGM, you get access to a variety of parlay selection features like same-game parlays, live betting options, and more. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code ON3, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app, sign up using bonus code ON3, deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code ON3 when you sign up. Make this college football season one for the history books. Make it legendary. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use promo code ON3 and get your $1,500 first bet offer today. Michigan against Oklahoma. Anthony Broom, huge game on Saturday night. Who is your offensive player of the game? Who's going to stand out for the Wolverines on that side of the football, win or lose?
Andrew Anthony is player of the game. This is tough. If they're going to win this game, I know I've said so much it's about the guys around him and the supporting cast, but your freshman quarterback, it's Bryce Underwood. I think if Michigan finds a way to pull this out, it's going to be because he made one of the big – there's going to be a couple plays that either he makes or doesn't make, John Mateer makes or doesn't make. I think this guy is different. I think he's a unicorn, and I think he's going to give Michigan a punt, more than a puncher's chance, whether they win or not, by how he performs.
I have to stick to the brand of this podcast. My offensive player of the game is Max Bredesen. We're a pro fullback, pro H-back, pro tight end podcast. But I just think he's such a great player to have on your side when it's going to be a physical game. It's going to be a tough game. It's probably going to be a close game. And, he's a guy who's performed at that level. He can set the tone for you. So I'm going to go with big number 44, Max Bredesen. I will start with my defensive player of the game, and I'm going with the hitman, Brandon Hillman, the junior safety, who said before last week's game, hey, if they have the same colors as Ohio State, it's pretty easy to flip that switch. Oklahoma's got similar colors too. I'm going with Brandon Hillman.
That wasn't his exact quote. Do you want to share his exact quote?
Yeah, we're a family-friendly show.
Okay, so that's your pick here. I'm going to go with TJ Metcalf. I wrote about this earlier. Last week, he played 39 of his 59 snaps at nickel, 12 as a box safety, and another 7 as a deep safety. He also logged 3 pass rushing snaps as well. I just think there's a lot you can do with this guy, and certainly I think stopping the tight end over the middle of the field is going to be an emphasis, especially after last week when they got sort of torched there by New Mexico's tight end. So TJ Metcalf, I think, is a guy that this thing could swing on. And also, it might also be Cole Sullivan, who was very productive last week. Him and Jimmy Rolder are going to kind of Frankenstein the linebacker thing until Barham comes back in the second half. But I'm going to go with TJ Metcalf.
I like that pick. I thought Metcalf was all over the field last week. And a great point on the middle of the field being important for Michigan to defend. John Mateer, of his 30 completions last week, 19 of them went to the middle third of the field. And what does that tell you? Illinois State's a terrible defense. They let him get inside, right? Their traffic cones, like you mentioned a lot. But he was very comfortable on those throws and didn't look as good when he had to go to the sideline. So just an observation from one game, but worth noting. X Factor. Anthony, start us off with that one.
I'm going to go with the aforementioned Cole Sullivan.
Okay.
I just think from an archetype perspective, he can approximate a little bit more what Jayshon Barham does for you on the football field when it comes to rushing the passer, dropping back into coverage, playing the regular linebacker spot. Like I said, I think it'll be a timeshare between him and Jimmy Rolder. Wouldn't be surprised if he got the quote unquote starting nod, but that's a guy who I think you want to get as many of those freakishly athletic guys on the field in a game like this, and he's one of Michigan's better ones.
I'm going to go with sophomore running back Jordan Marshall. I don't know that he's going to carry as many times as Justice Haynes does. I don't know if he'll be as effective, but I think in some short yardage situations, when he gets his opportunities early downs as well, he's going to have a few key runs for this Michigan offense, 8-9 yards, gashing away some body blows on this Oklahoma defense. And as we mentioned earlier, a little foreshadowing, Jordan Marshall, good on grass. We have proof of it. Also worth noting, Justice Haynes did play at Oklahoma last year as a member of Alabama, had 3 rushes for 18 yards. Damon Payne, defensive tackle, also played for the Crimson Tide at Oklahoma in that 24-3 loss, a win for Oklahoma. And another thing they have in common with Michigan, they both beat Alabama last year. Final score predictions. I can start us off.
Please do it. Hold on. Let me start real quick. I want to publicly reprimand myself.
Okay.
For on social media, I gave Ethan McDowell the props for making his staff prediction. I thought he was the only guy that had picked Michigan to win this game. I was wrong. There was another staff member that did. I need a stronger prescription, but continue.
Totally fine. That other staff member was me. Michigan 24, Oklahoma 21. I think it's going to be a close game. I think the defenses are going to play well. I think the offenses are going to make some plays too. And that 24 means likely that Dominic Zavada got you on the board as well. Maybe a clutch kick.
Yeah, for me, I mean, throughout this week, I've felt better and better about this game. And I think it truly is a coin flip. I think it's a game that Michigan can win. It's not this Oklahoma team is not as loaded as that Texas team was last year. Now, John Mateer ultimately might be better than Quinn Ewers, but Quinn Ewers was incredible in the first half of that game, and that was still a lot of new for the Michigan defense. This all comes down to the things we talked about with the infrastructure, Dominic Zavada, how often he needs to come out and kick. I just think when you have these coin flip games, and maybe this is the coward's way out, but I'm going to give Oklahoma the nod because of Mateer, because of the home field advantage, but it is close. I mean, I'm not going to be surprised if Michigan wins this game at all. I wouldn't be surprised if they won it by a touchdown, but I just think in the here and now as constructed, I think this team's going to be a little bit more ready to go on the road and win in a couple weeks than it is right here, right now. And really remember, they have one true road win under their belt under Sherrone Moore. Now, mind you, it's a huge one. It's Ohio State, but a lot to prove there. I have Oklahoma winning 26-23.
You can bet this and join us on BetMGM. 5.5-point underdog are the Wolverines heading into this game against Oklahoma. 45.5 is the over-under. Chris Ballas's pick over on the Wolverine.com staff predictions is Oklahoma 23, Michigan 20. So he's expecting close one there, but Oklahoma, same margin, I believe, as you, but a little bit lower scoring. Go ahead.
Can I just say one thing? I think if Michigan's going to win this game, the under has to hit.
Okay. A little more of a slugfest then. If the Wolverines come out on top, I guess I do have the under hitting by 45.5, so I don't mind that, or by a half point. Sorry, of that 45.5 total. Let's move in to our final segment. No man knows the future. We will pick 5 games from week 2 in college football. Last week, our guy Chris Ballas, who's not here, 4-1 for him. I went 3-2. Anthony went 2-3. Long season.
So we're keeping track of these this year.
I think we are. I think we have to.
Okay,
and
that's fine.
I was like, okay, sweet. I think I might have come out on top in this one. I was planning on keeping track anyway, maybe. And then it turns out Ballas was 4-1. I went back and watched, so good for him.
Oh, it's good for accountability's sake. I'm glad the one I did get correct was that Utah was going to stuff UCLA in a trash can and then roll them down the San Gabriel
Well,
Mountains.
let's get to that in a second. Let's start with the Cy-Hawk rivalry, Iowa at Iowa State. We are going to pick UCLA in a moment. Iowa State, 3.5-point favorite, over-unders 41.5. This game in Ames, Iowa, noon on Fox, big noon kickoff. I got Iowa State. I probably would have taken Iowa if the quarterback looked better last week, but Mark Gronowski, the South Dakota State transfer, who was kind of supposed to be this game changer for them, finally Iowa has a quarterback. He goes 8 for 15 for 44 yards and a touchdown last week against Albany. I know they played multiple quarterbacks. I didn't watch the game, but I don't know what happened. He ran a lot too, but that is like an Iowa quarterback stat line. That is not a game changer to me, at least yet, and I'm sure I'll see more of him on Saturday, but I'm going with Iowa State.
I think Iowa ran the ball 50 times for 313 yards or something.
That's the most Iowa thing ever. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm going with Iowa State as well. I think being at home helps them here. Though, again, anytime I see an Iowa point total in the low 40s, I'm willing to, if it goes under, which it probably will, that probably lends itself to an Iowa cover, but I'll take Iowa State here.
Illinois at Duke. Illinois, 3-point favorite, over under 49.5. This one noon on ESPN. Sneaky, solid quarterback matchup. Luke Altmaier at Illinois. Tulane transfer Darian Mensah for Manny Diaz and Duke. Andrell Anthony, former Oklahoma Sooner, former Michigan Wolverine, is a wideout for Duke this year. But I'm going against Andrell this week in a couple different ways. His former school, Oklahoma's most recent former school, will go down. And I think Illinois will cover this 3-point spread on the road.
I'm going to go with Duke in this one. I'm a Darian Mensah guy, and I think this is going to be another one of this is not just a sneaky good game. I think I'm very excited to see this game because I think Duke could be a sleeper in the ACC. So I'm going to go with the Blue Devils here. Okay.
You can start on this one. I know you have a little bit of a story behind it. Oregon hosting Oklahoma State. Oregon is a 28.5-point favorite. Over under is 57.5. This one 3:30 on CBS. Anthony, what do you have?
So I got in late last night and I went to go pick up the rental car, and I'll just put it this way. It was very obvious where I was coming from and what I was coming here for.
You were wearing home field apparel from Michigan.
That's true. I was. And
great sponsor.
The guy at the rental car counter said, "Hey, what are you here for the game?" I said, "I am." And he responded, "I hope that your team and your fan base leaves happy." And then he said, "Go Pokes." He's an Oklahoma State guy. So how can I pick against Oklahoma State this week? They're 28.5-point underdogs. They're going to get blown out, but they will cover that number.
I'm going to pick against them for one reason. I got Oregon covering 28.5. I don't know if you saw earlier in the week Mike Gundy talking about how much Oregon has to spend. They spent $40 million on the roster, and we only spent $7 million. And then Dan Lanning's response was kind of awesome, kind of baller. He said, "We spend to win. Some people save to have an excuse for why they don't win." This reminds me of when Colorado was talking trash a couple years ago before they went and played Oregon, and then Oregon just murdered them and ran up the score. I think Oregon's going to handle it. I think Oklahoma State has big problems. I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Gundy gets fired, which is unfortunate.
Is Alan Bowman still on the roster?
I don't think so, but maybe. He's got another year.
So out of respect for the rental car guy, I'll keep the pick, and also add in my own pick. This game's going over.
That would be fun. Two more. Boston College at Michigan State. Michigan State, a 5-point favorite. Over unders 46.5. 7:30 on Peacock. I actually do like the under here. I thought MSU's defense looked really good last week. They didn't allow any points. The only points came out of pick 6. But I will take the Spartans to cover if I have to pick a side, which I do, according to my own rules.
Yeah, I'm leaning Michigan State too. I never put a whole lot of stock into their Friday night openers because they always play a weird, kind of underwhelming game. It was a backdoor cover for Western Michigan. I'll go with Michigan State. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
I made the terrible pick of taking UCLA last week against Utah, and I'm back on the horse UCLA at UNLV at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. UCLA 2.5-point favorite. Over-unders 54.5. This game, 8 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. I don't know why, because Dan Mullen is a much better coach than Deshaun Foster. This scares me to death, but I'm here for the shtick. I'm sticking with Nico Iamaleava and UCLA in this game. And by the way, Alex Orji got benched during game one, came off the bench last week for 8 snaps. He's kind of playing a similar role for UNLV than he did at Michigan last year, but he will be featured in this game if people are going to be watching on their second screen while the Wolverines play Oklahoma.
Wow. I mean, this line is pretty telling of what the nation thinks of the UCLA Bruins.
They're favored.
Yeah, 2.5 points. Come
UNLV
on.
almost made the playoff last year.
Okay. I feel like it's kind of a sucker bet. I'll go with UCLA, but I'm not confident at all.
Me neither. I love it. That's our show for this week. As we mentioned, you can follow all the Michigan coverage from Michigan against Oklahoma. We will be down in Norman at Memorial Stadium on Saturday night for the game. Anthony's already down in town right now in Oklahoma City. TheWolverine.com is the place to get the coverage. Use the promo code UM1 for 2 months of access for just $1. Like the video. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to our channel as well. And we will see everyone next time.